We always consider him to be a strong man. And on page 2, we started on Wednesday night, Samson as a man, and looked at some of his character flaws. When he is looking for a wife, the only thing that's mentioned is he saw her, and she looked good in his eyes. So choosing a wife solely based on looks is not a good character. Samson chooses to marry contrary to God's law. She is a Philistine. Samson is disrespectful to his parents. They try to talk him out of it. He says, nope, go get her for me. And although they were good, godly parents, especially the mother, they are weak in this particular time, and they give in to their son. And that often happens today, too. Samson broke his vows. He's not a man of his word. That was number 4. Samson was a gambler. Number 5. Samson was arrogant. Number 6. Samson is vengeful and easily angered. And number 7. And Wednesday, we also got over Samson was cruel to animals, which brings us to number 9. Samson was short-sighted. Again, it's not a real good characteristic to have. You look at the opening paragraph under number 9, the cruel vengeance that Samson took on the Philistines is due to his father-in-law giving his wife away to one of the companions from his wedding. This vengeance is not said to be directed by the Spirit of the Lord. This vengeance led to retribution. Judges 15, verse 6. Then the Philistines asked, who did this? They were told it was Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because he took Samson's wife and gave her to another man. So the Philistines went to her and her father and burned them to death. Being short-sighted is easy to do. Being able to see the future clearly is far more difficult. In fact, there's a saying that we have, and that is 2020. What's it saying about hindsight's 2020? And so here we have him being short-sighted. He didn't think about his actions and the reaction that other people would have due to them on people that he was actually related to, his wife and his father-in-law. And usually, short-sighted people make a lot of mistakes. And these people suffered the short-sighted mistake of Samson. And one of the reasons why I think weak character people take the easy, quick way is not only can they not see the future, but in some ways they can see the future. What can they see in the future that makes them want to take the quick, easy way? Yeah. They can see it's going to be difficult. They can see the hardships. And so when we talk about people being short-sighted, well, that's true in one way, but another way, they are able to see the future. They just don't want to deal with it. And they think that ignoring it will make it easier. Or they just think that they can only deal with one thing at a time. Or they think that what I'm going through now can't be worse than what I might go through in the future. Can you see all the excuses that pop up into people's minds? And you just have to realize you have to do it. Yes, Paul.
Information immediately, your information may be incorrect.
Very good. Your information may be incorrect, which leads to being short-sighted. Your information may also be not fully informed, too. You just got part of the story. How many people have done something dumb because they only got part of the story? I see some hands going up and other people going, yes, some people do that, yes. We all have done that. We get part of the story, our emotions get involved, but we forget that oftentimes, and this is one of the characteristic traits of weak character, and that is, should emotions lead to the intellect, or should the intellect lead to the emotions? I'll say it one more time. Should emotions lead to the intellect? Should emotion, I should have said, just let me say it once. Should emotions lead the intellect, or should the intellect lead the emotions? B. But short-sighted people, which one is leading them? Emotions. And that's what gets people in trouble more than anything else. They can't see the consequences. I love the study of words. The etymology of consequence. Anybody know what it is? Sometimes con means against, and sometimes it means with, which is ironic, isn't it? Sequence, very good. So with sequence. Consequence means con with sequence, which means things that follow in a row. And when you can't see the consequence, you're not seeing how things follow. And it's because we act with our reactions. Anybody got anything that they want to talk about on being short-sighted? Yeah, I'll just give you an example. I don't think my son would object to me telling this story. And if he does, he's not here. Now, he realized that he made a mistake, and he was very mature in the way that he handled it. Most of you know I have two adopted sons, and they are both black. They're twins. And there was this white boy at school that kept using the N-word against one of my sons. And my son just did nothing. And then one day in gym, that same boy who'd been insulting him took a gym ball, probably like a dodgeball, threw it at my son and hit him in the head. And my son's anger just erupted, and he was very strong, threw that ball, and it hit that other student extremely hard. Now, he should not have done that. In fact, that is the same boy, I believe, that at one time they got in an altercation. Now, the parent of that white boy tried to have my son arrested. And we got a letter from the judicial system saying that he has been charged with assault. Now he's in middle school. Okay, now we're getting a little bit concerned, but we don't really think it leveled up to assault. The judge saw what was going on and immediately dropped it. And I was thankful for that. And I said, this boy and my son, they got in a physical altercation. And the other boys in the school started ostracizing that white boy. And my son decided how he treated me was wrong, but how he's being treated now is also wrong. And he started befriending that white boy. And they became good friends. Now you can see how emotions got in the way on both of them. Oftentimes when emotions get in the way, the law can get involved, whether rightfully or wrongfully. Then my son's hopefully good character and good training and intellect took control, and he decided, I've not been behaving right. Because I told him, I said, no, you owe that young boy an apology. Yes, what he did was wrong. But what you did was wrong also. You see, I had to let my intellect lead my emotions also. Instead of saying, yeah, way to go. Way to get back at him. How dare he say that to my son? But instead, he became his friend. And can you imagine the life of that young boy if everybody in the school ostracized him? So intellect needs to lead emotions. When emotions lead intellect, it usually leads to a lot more hurt. And throwing the ball back at him was not the right thing to do. Hitting him was not the right thing to do. Could not see the consequences of it. But then when he started to think about the consequences, that's when he started making good decisions. And they both were better off for it. That's a good story, isn't it? I like that story. Anybody else on being short-sighted? Okay, Samson was a violent man. Now, this one I put in here, but I felt somewhat conflicted because all the judges were what? Violent men. Violent men. All the judges were violent men. Because what is violent and what were they all involved in? Yeah, war. War is by nature violent. And we sometimes find that Samson is using violence under the control of the Holy Spirit. And sometimes we find that he is using violence under his own vengeful self and weak character. But we find that sometimes we see that he is just using his strength not for the purpose that he was given it by God for, but rather he's using it for himself. What was the purpose of the strength that God gave to him? That's right, to free them from the Philistines. But he often used it for his own vengeance. We could make a broader point here. And instead of saying just Samson was a violent man, we could say Samson misused the gifts that God gave him. And that is probably one that more people can associate with. Most people probably do not consider themselves violent. But most people could probably think of gifts that God has given them and conclude, I'm not using them the way that I should. I've got another story. This one is tell a story on my dad. Again, he's not here. Yay. But my dad was, like many of you, he was in the Army. Did not have the most pleasant of jobs while he was in the Army. And years later, after he was in a class, the teacher asked this question: what are you most afraid of? What do you think of some answers people would give to the question, what are you most afraid of? Okay, I'm afraid of the unknown. What else?
Letting people down.
Letting people down. Anybody else? What are you most afraid of? Or just say, what are you afraid of? So if you can't think, what's number one? What are you afraid of? Anybody else? What are you afraid of? Yes. Dying. That's a common answer. What are you afraid of? Fire. 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 House catching on fire. Anybody else? What are you afraid of? Failure. What are you afraid of? Yeah.
Trees where when you run into them, they wrap around your face.
That was very specific. Anybody else? What are you afraid of?
A lot of people afraid of darkness, afraid of heights.
Heights, darkness. Anybody else? What are you afraid of? Yes, Mike. Pain. Pain. Okay. Anybody else? What are you afraid of? Okay, some people would answer disease. Some people would answer loss of job, not being able to pay bills, being alone. There's a long list, isn't there, of things that you are rightfully afraid of. Well, my father just sat there silent and didn't say anything, and so the teacher said, well, TJ, would you like to say something? This is what my dad said. I'm afraid of the evil that I know I can do. Wow. That's a thoughtful answer. I'm afraid of the evil that I know I'm capable of. Well, was Samson capable of a lot of evil? He should have been afraid of the evil he knew he was capable of. But he wasn't. Anybody got any comments on number 10?
I think it's a fairly strong thread throughout his life that Samson is an arrogant man. And that arrogance is broken down fully at the end of his life, in which he has to rely on God for strength. Obviously, I think that's a corollary for Israel, right? Israel's arrogant, believes that they can do what's right in their own eyes, do what they want. That's kind of the beauty of the book of Judges in a lot of ways, is that it is quite poetic and that it shows that time and time again through many different illustrative events through history, through this period of history.
Yeah, one of the things about Judges, and I would love to dig even deeper to Judges one day, is they not only represent themselves, but they also represent Israel at various times in various ways. And you find Othniel, a judge that was considered very good. Ehud, nothing negative said about him. He could represent the Israelites as they were coming into the land of Canaan and conquering. Then you've got Barak and Deborah. And I think Barak is cowardly and afraid. Did Israel ever show themselves to be cowardly and afraid? Yeah. They didn't want to enter into the land of Canaan the first time, and then other times also. You've got Jephthah and his combining false worship with true worship. Do we see that within Israel? Very much so. And we see Samson and his arrogance. And did Israel or the Jews ever think that they were better than anybody else because they were God's people? You can see that these judges not only represent themselves, but they represent Israel themselves in various times and places. Anybody else on number 10? Okay, let's look at number 11, Samson as a man. Samson was controlled by sexual desires. Chapter 16, verse 1. You have Samson's wife being burned in chapter 15, and in chapter 16, he goes sees a prostitute. He seems to be dominated by his sexual desire. And so these are the character flaws that, I saw within of Samson. And can y'all think of any other character flaws that maybe not be mentioned here in my little booklet or pamphlet or handout?
Previous page.
Notice I said, does anybody see any flaws in Samson?
Yeah. What typo do I have now? Apparently everybody's seeing it but me. What page? Because I actually have these numbered. So it should be a period instead of a comma. Oh, there's more than one. There's all kinds of ways that I could have done this wrong. That reminds me, no matter how often you read something, if you wrote it, if you've written things, and Alan can back this up, no matter how many times you've read something, proofread it, that you wrote, you don't see what other people will see. And when Grace does that, first came out, I proofread it, I had other people proofread it, the people who printed it proofread it, and it came out. And on page 1 of chapter 1, my mother said, there is an error on page 1. It's like, any of y'all familiar with the sinful Bible? Yeah, what's a sinful Bible, Johnny? Yep. They were printing it and forgot the not in the Ten Commandments. So it said, thou shalt commit adultery. So that one brings me comfort. That was a far worse mistake than any of the ones that I've made. Okay, despite all of the character flaws of Samson, was God able to use him? Yeah. This is one of the areas where God's grace keeps coming up again and again and again. God uses people not because they are perfect. God uses people because He chooses them. And He chose Samson when? Before he's born. Okay. This definitely was not based upon his character. Now, do I believe that God knew his character? Yeah. But God chooses people and uses them despite their character. God chooses people even because of their bad character at times. God can use people in His grace, not because people are perfect, but because His will is perfect. And so if you ever think, I'm not good enough for God to use, the correct answer is, yes, that's correct. But who in the Bible was good enough for God to use? But can God use you despite you not being good enough? Yes. Mark.
If we all would be a little bit humble pie, we could all truly say God uses us all in spite of our imperfections and flaws.
I don't know if this is a specific quote, but somebody one time said, God uses us despite ourselves. And if God had to wait for perfect people to be able to be used, He would be handicapped, not being able to use anybody. Anybody else on the character flaws of Samson? And despite them, God used them. Okay, let's look at part 2, Samson as a husband. Judges chapter 14, verse 16a So Samson's wife came to him weeping and said, "You hate me and don't love me. You told my people the riddle, but haven't explained it to me." Okay, first of all, let's kind of divide this up. Should husbands and wives share everything that they know with their spouse? In fact, if you are in a leadership position, for example, like Frank is one of the shepherds here, there's no way he can share everything with Pat. There's been times where Janet's asked me what's going on, and I said, "Can't tell you." And she said, "Okay." She didn't throw a fit because she knew that there are certain things that people tell me in confidence, and I'm not supposed to spread it around. Was there any reason for, did I hear a, yeah. It's not a 100% criticism of him. I'm going to say, here it is. Was there any reason for him not to share with his wife the riddle? Well, I guess you're right in that. I guess he couldn't trust her. Did he know he couldn't trust her? Y'all are ruining this point for me, okay? Let's make this statement. If a husband doesn't share important things with his wife, what kind of marriage do they have?
I know it doesn't say it, so I'm rephrasing it.
You already said that. Man in leadership can't always share everything with us.
No, not everything, but if they don't, there are some husbands and wives that don't share anything. And if a husband and wife don't in general share with one another, what kind of relationship do they have?
Not communication.
Yeah. In fact, the fact that he didn't share with his wife, the fact that she was ready to betray him, this shows that their marriage is already in trouble. Of course, it started in trouble.
Because she was a Philistine. Oftentimes, if you ask psychologists and counselors, what is the most important quality between a husband and wife? What often comes up as number one? Communication. Yep. And they were not communicating at this point on something as simple as this.
Before you wanted.
If I trusted my wife, I guess I would. But I have a good relationship with my wife, and his relationship doesn't seem to have started off very good, and he's keeping secrets from her on the honeymoon, basically. Samson prioritizes parents over his wife. Where do we get that from the text? Yeah. I haven't even told my wife, or my parents. Why should I tell you? What's one of the very first statements made about marriage in Genesis?
Chapter 2, everything goes back to Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Leave and cleave. So when you leave and cleave, who becomes the number one priority? The spouse. That's right, not the parents. Yep. Absolutely. Husbands and wives that don't put their parents ahead of their spouse are going to have weak marriages. Whatever I was supposed to say, like Like 2 weeks ago, I thought I ordered water, and apparently I said sweet tea. Yeah, Ryan, that's dangerous. Number 3, Samson deserts wife for his parents. Judges 14, 19 through 20. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he went down to Ascalon and killed 30 of their men. He stripped them and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. In a rage, Samson returned to his father's house, and his wife was given to one of the men who had accompanied him. Now, as Mark says, she was not innocent in all of this. But does that mean that he should just end the marriage, desert him, desert her? No, not at all. And this is going to lead to some trouble. Again, you go back to Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. And if you see what I've got written, this is why a man, maturity, leaves, transition, his father and mother, the model of a complete family, and bonds, new family, with his wife, who is his complement, and they become, which is a learning process of friendship and trust, one flesh, deep intimacy between two people. There's a lot in that one verse that we can learn from about marriage. And husbands and wives that prioritize parents over the spouse and to easily desert for no reason. You know, the spouse for the parents, again, is putting the parents ahead of the spouse or just acting selfishly. Number 4, I didn't really know how to phrase this, so this is the way I just phrased it. Samson thinks he can buy his wife's affections. Judges chapter 15, verses 1 through 2. You know, later on, during the harvest, Samson took a young goat as a gift and visited his wife. I want to go to my wife in her room, he said, but her father would not let him enter. I was sure you hated her, her father says, so I gave her to one of the men who accompanied you. Isn't your younger sister more beautiful than she is? Why not take her instead? And we don't know how long Samson had been away, but he left because maybe he was mad, sulking, chapter 14, verse 19. His wife was deserted, chapter 14, verse 20. He neglected his marriage, which kind of ruined it, and she was given away to another, to the point that her father, his father-in-law, thought he hated her. And they definitely were not the type of marriage that they should. But it's like, how's he going to solve all of this? I'll just bring her a gift. I assumed it was for her. I assumed he was just bringing her a gift. If he's bringing the father a gift, that might be even worse. Maybe so. I don't think so. I do know that it's very common nowadays, and probably maybe it always has been, that you try to buy your spouse's affection. You know, it's really hard for a man to go buy flowers just because. I've done that before. I've bought, flowers for my wife. And they say, oh, so her anniversary? I said, no. Oh, her birthday? No. What did you do? I didn't do anything. It was just because. But what's the best way to buy your spouse's affection? Okay, do something nice. listen. Okay, their love language. Anybody else? Wouldn't take them a goat. I don't know if that's where this comes from, got your goat. Little by little, something every day. Oh, okay. Clean house. Yeah. I one time, you're talking about what you tell your wife. I told my wife, I'm a 9 and she's a 1. And she said, what? Because you're the one for me. She said, that doesn't work. What else can a husband do to make up? What else can a wife do to make up? Quality time. What else? That definitely would not work on my wife. Anybody else? There's one thing that nobody's mentioned yet. There you go.
Apologize. Saying,
I am sorry. Actions do sometimes speak louder than words, but that does not mean words are not heard. So, apologize.
maybe a dog might work better nowadays. Anybody else?
Number 4. On Samson as a husband. Okay, let's do part 3. Part number 5 we kind of covered already. So Samson was selfish sexually to his wife, neglected her, and just wanted to come home and have sex. And that is not how the Bible views marital sex. Part 3, Samson's wife. Okay? Wife puts others and family before husband. Mark talked about this a little bit earlier. Judges 14, 15 through 17. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, persuade your husband to explain the riddle to us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to rob us? So Samson's wife came to him weeping and said, you hate me and don't love me. You told my people the riddle, but haven't explained it to me. Look, he said, I haven't even explained it to my father or mother, so why should I explain it to you? So she wept the 7 days of the feast, and at last, on the 7th day, he explained it to her because she had nagged him so much that she explained it, and then she explained it to her people. Now, we could say, well, she was threatened. But what is the one thing that Samson was known for? Strength. She is not thinking Samson can protect her. Could Samson protect her? Very much so. And we talked before many times, but we talked a little bit about it Wednesday night. You know, the number one need of a man is the number one need of a woman that's fulfilled in marriage. And for a woman, it is security, and for a man, it's respect. She's not showing respect to him right now. She is thinking he cannot protect me. And this marriage has so many flaws to it. Now, I don't know how much of this is a slur or just how much of this is cultural language. But verse 18 out of chapter 14, when he's talking to those that found out the secret, if you hadn't plowed with my young cow. that's not the most poetic thing romantic thing to call your spouse. You wouldn't know my riddle now. And that shows how they gathered the information from them. So the wife puts others and family before her husband. The wife verbally abuses her husband to get her way. How does she do this? You don't love me. Do you think a wife has ever said that to a husband other than this wife to manipulate? Yeah, you don't love me. Or if you loved me, you would. There's a series of YouTube videos that the wife gets on there and says, my husband told me he doesn't love me anymore. And then out the back says, that is not what I said. Then she says, what did you say? I said, you can't spend any more money at Amazon this month. Love should not be a weapon. But she verbally abuses her husband. You don't love me. Now, what time? Okay, let's do. See if we can finish this part. The wife uses her emotions against her husband. What does she do for 7 days? Nags and cries. Okay, but we'll go with cries first of all. How many of you have ever heard a man cannot stand to hear a woman cry? Do you think it's true that a man cannot stand to hear a woman cry? Very much so. Because it tugs on us in ways that I don't know if I could put into words. She cries for 7 days. And accompanied with that is nagging her husband. I was watching another YouTube video. You can tell what I do with my spare time. And it went something along this line, that wives need to stop nagging their husbands. We will get it done within the next 6 months, just like we said we would. And oftentimes, men get nagged because they're not doing things on her timetable. And sometimes men get nagged because they aren't being responsible and keeping to their word and thinking of her. I'm going to close with this one little statement, but you got to promise me, ladies, not to use this in an evil way. They've done studies that nagging helps men live longer because it makes us do what we need to do. Don't use that for evil.